months ago before the government came in and attacked us and shut us down.
For nearly 30 years, Eustace Conway lived a life most people thought they understood, but he was hiding a second world the whole time. While everyone saw the wild, fearless mountain man, another side of him stayed completely secret. What was he protecting? Why did he hide it? Join us as we uncover the truth behind this mystery. When the cracks first showed, for many years, people looked at Eustace Conway and saw a man who lived in a world beyond rules, noise, and modern pressure. He rode his horses through forests, built his shelters with his hands, and taught others how to survive with only the earth as their guide. To thousands, he seemed like the pure example of a simple, natural life. But as his story grew, so did the shadows around it. And slowly, small cracks began to appear, cracks that hinted at a more complicated, hidden truth. One of the first cracks came from a story Conway told proudly for years. He often shared how he crossed the entire United States on horseback in a little over 100 days. It was the type of tale that made listeners widen their eyes and feel a spark of awe. But when people began to look into history, they found that earlier writers from long ago completed a similar journey in less time. This raised questions. Was Conway's crossing truly record-breaking, or had excitement blended with memory to create a smoother story than the truth? This did not mean he never achieved great things. Conway's life was full of daring journeys and bold challenges. But the simple doubt around this famous ride made some people watch him more closely. They began to wonder what was fact and what was storytelling flair. And for the first time, the image of the flawless wilderness hero began to blur. More cracks appeared when people looked deeper into his message. Conway often spoke against the rush of modern life. He encouraged others to let go of greed, waste, and too much comfort. He taught lessons about using what you have, working with your hands, and living without heavy dependence on the modern world. But his own life required money, land, and steady support. He owned large pieces of property. He ran camps where people paid to learn from him. He kept his land functioning through donations, public programs, and the attention that came from being featured on television. Even running Turtle Island Preserve required steady finances, careful planning, and systems that did not quite match the idea of a man living completely outside society. For many of his followers, this did not lessen their admiration. They believed that even those who live simply must still work within certain boundaries, but others saw contradictions. How could a person teach against consumer culture while depending on modern tools, public attention, and financial structures? It raised a difficult question. Was he living the primitive dream, or balancing two very different worlds at once? Then came the legal troubles. In the early 2010s, the peaceful image of Turtle Island was shaken. Local authorities examined the buildings on his land and declared that many of them did not meet official building codes. Cabins, workspaces, and structures built with natural materials did not fit modern rules. As a result, the preserve was forced to shut its doors to visitors for a time. This decision hit Conway hard. He had built Turtle Island as a place of learning and connection, where people could rediscover their bond with the earth. Being told to close it down felt like an attack on his purpose, but from the outside, it looked like another example of the clash between his off-grid lifestyle and the world he still had to live in. Not long after this, he faced another challenge, an arrest for trespassing during a disagreement over a property border. This was not the image most people associated with the calm, philosophical teacher who loved peace and nature. The incident reminded everyone that even a man who tries to escape the modern world cannot escape human conflict. Behind all these public events, there were also the quiet mysteries. Though Conway had been in the public eye for many years, almost nothing was known about his personal relationships. Public sources showed no confirmed marriage or children. Friends and followers spoke about him with respect, sometimes with deep admiration, but his private life remained sealed. Some believed he preferred it that way. Others wondered if this isolation hid wounds, fears, or simply a lifestyle too demanding for long-term companionship. Over time, small criticisms began to rise. A few former acquaintances described him as someone highly focused on land, control, and his mission. Some believed he pushed relationships aside in order to keep his dream alive. Others felt he carried strong ideas but sometimes ignored the emotional needs of people around him. While these views did not represent everyone, they added more layers to his already complex story. Still, none of this erased the work Conway had done. None of it removed the fact that he had inspired thousands, taught valuable skills, and protected land that might have been lost to development. But it did raise a question that would follow him for years. Was he a pure example of natural living, or was he balancing the life of a teacher, a businessman, and a public figure all at once? These cracks did not destroy his image, but they changed it. But if these early cracks hinted at deeper truths, the next layer of Conway's life revealed something even more surprising. Because behind the world he showed the public, there was another side he rarely allowed anyone to see. The hidden layers beneath the legend. If the first cracks caused whispers, the deeper contradictions in Conway's life created full waves of curiosity. People began to look beyond the surface and ask tougher questions. Why did a man who preached simplicity still depend on modern support? Why did he guard his personal life so closely? And why did his story sometimes feel like two different lives stitched together? The tension between his philosophy and his reality grew stronger as more people examined it. Conway encouraged others to drop their dependence on material things. He told stories about living off the land, trusting nature, and using the strength of your hands instead of the ease of modern machines. Yet to keep Turtle Island alive, he had to work within a system filled with fees, taxes, permits, and steady income. He needed staff, helpers, donations, repairs, and visitors who paid to learn from him. This did not mean he did not believe in his message. Many who met him said he lived with deep passion and honesty. But the truth remained, his life required a balance between the old world and the new one. That balance created a quiet struggle he rarely spoke about. It also raised a powerful question. Can someone truly escape modern life while still depending on the pieces of it? Another layer of contradiction appeared when people looked at how he presented himself to the world. On television, he seemed strong, steady, and unshakably connected to the earth. But behind the scenes, the pressure of running a large preserve, dealing with laws, managing people, and keeping his mission alive weighed heavily on him. Those who knew him closely spoke of moments when the responsibilities became overwhelming. Some critics said he put too much attention on land and work, leaving little room for human relationships. They said he had the heart of a leader but sometimes lacked the softer touch needed to maintain close bonds. Others believed this isolation was part of the cost of his lifestyle. Living away from society often means living away from the comfort of everyday companionships. The questions around his mission grew louder. Was he truly a guide to a purer life? Or was he unintentionally shaping himself into a type of wilderness entrepreneur, someone who blended ancient skills with modern business to survive? Again, this did not reduce the meaning of his work, but it made his story far more complex than the simple picture many had once seen. As people learned more, they discovered that Conway's life was not just about skill and survival. It was also about navigating rules he often disliked, pressures he never invited, and a public image he did not fully control. He had chosen a path that set him apart from society, yet society still shaped him in ways that could not be avoided. Perhaps this was the real double life, not a secret identity, but a constant pull between two worlds. In one world, he lived freely among trees, rivers, mountains, and wild creatures. In the other, he faced building codes, land disputes, business demands, and public expectations. These two worlds clashed often, and he spent years trying to hold them together. This struggle did not make him less admirable. In many ways, it made him more human. Instead of a perfect legend, he became a man trying to live by his values while facing the weight of reality. And in that struggle, there is something deeply relatable, even inspiring, because every person in some way tries to balance dreams and duty, ideals and survival. But even with these cracks exposed, one question still remains: the question of what his life truly represents and whether the myth or the man holds the deeper meaning. The hidden life, what we don't know. For many years, people have watched Eustace Conway ride through forests, chop wood with calm skill, and live in simple shelters far away from modern noise. His life appears clear and peaceful from the outside, but behind that strong image lies a part of him the world has never fully understood. It is a space filled with silence, unanswered questions, and mysteries that only make his story more powerful. One of the biggest mysteries is his personal life. Even though he has spent decades in the public eye, almost nothing is known about his romantic relationships or family ties. There are no reliable accounts of a long-term partner, no confirmed story of children, no clear picture of what his private life looks like. He keeps that door tightly closed. That silence creates space for people to wonder. It invites questions. Who stands beside him when the day ends? Who shares his victories or comforts him through his struggles? No one truly knows. Some believe he chooses this privacy because emotional bonds might distract him from his mission. Others think his lifestyle, demanding, wild, always moving, makes it hard to build a traditional home or steady partnership. And some imagine that he may prefer the quiet company of nature over the unpredictable world of human relationships. But again, these are thoughts, not confirmed truths. The only fact is that he keeps this part of his life completely hidden. His silence only deepens the mystery. It turns simple unknowns into intriguing questions. And as people hear more about him, those questions grow louder. The mystery continues when we look at what he shares with the public. On television and in interviews, the focus is always on the exciting parts of his life. We see him making fire with his hands, teaching others ancient skills, guiding horses across long trails, and living among the trees as if he belongs to the land itself. These images are beautiful, and they create the picture of a man filled with strength, confidence, and freedom. But the world rarely sees the other side, the side that exists when the cameras are gone. We do not see the long nights when he is exhausted from managing the preserve. We do not see the days when loneliness settles in like a quiet shadow. We do not witness the pressure of keeping a 1,000-acre preserve running, or the financial stress that comes with maintaining land, buildings, tools, animals, and staff. Television does not show the legal paperwork, the arguments, the planning, or the moments when he questions his own decisions. It does not show the fear that comes when rules change or when authorities demand repairs he cannot easily afford. It does not show the heartbreak of losing support or facing criticism from people who do not understand his world. This hidden side does not make him weaker, it makes him human. But the world rarely hears about it, and because of that, his life can appear smoother than it really is. People see the adventure, not the weight behind it. This brings us to another deep contradiction in his story. Conway teaches others to live simply, to avoid waste, to stay close to the land, and to rely on personal strength rather than modern comfort. His message inspires many people who dream of a life free from noise and distractions. But to maintain the life he built, he must also walk through the modern world he often warns others about. He owns land that costs money to protect. He faces legal battles that require lawyers. He must organize programs, manage visitors, and follow safety rules to keep the preserve open. When he goes on television or speaks to crowds, he depends on cameras, microphones, and platforms that are part of the very society he encourages people to step away from. This does not make him dishonest. It simply reveals the complicated truth behind his lifestyle. Living completely outside modern systems is almost impossible, even for someone as skilled and determined as Conway. So he lives between these two worlds, half rooted in the wild, half bound to the realities of society. That balance is difficult. It forces him to make choices that sometimes oppose his own ideals. This dual life raises powerful questions. Is the perfect natural lifestyle truly possible? Can anyone live fully off-grid and still manage land, people, and responsibilities? And how much of the dream must be adjusted to survive in the real world? These questions make Conway's story even more compelling. They show that he is not just a symbol of freedom. He is a man facing battles most people never see. But perhaps the biggest uncertainty of all lies in the future. Conway's lifestyle requires strength, physical, mental, emotional. It requires sharp senses, unshakable stamina, and endless resilience. Yet time changes everything. As years pass, bodies slow down, laws become stricter, society grows more complex. Attention from the media rises and falls like waves. What happens when his body becomes tired? What happens when rules shift in ways that make off-grid living harder? What happens if support decreases or if the next generation does not carry the same passion for ancient skills? These questions sit quietly in the background, waiting. They add both fear and wonder to his story. Because Conway is not just protecting his own life, he is protecting a whole culture of living simply, living close to the earth and remembering the old ways. The future of that culture depends not only on him, but on what comes after him. His preserve might one day face new laws. His teachings might be challenged by changing times. And without someone strong to continue the work, the dream he built could be at risk. Yet, there is also hope. His life has inspired countless people across the world. Long before the world knew his name, the double life had already begun. The untold beginnings of Eustace Conway's double life. Eustace Conway's story did not begin with fame or television. It began in a quiet corner of South Carolina, where a boy grew up learning to read the world not through textbooks, but through soil, trees, water, and wind. Long before people called him a naturalist, a survivalist, or a modern-day frontiersman, he was simply a curious child following the pull of the wild, and from the very beginning that pull shaped a life that would always exist between two worlds. He was born in the early 1960s in Columbia, South Carolina, into a family that already saw learning differently from most households. His parents were educators, but not the type to force their children into a narrow path. They believed in knowledge, but they also believed that the world itself was a classroom. This made their home a unique blend of structured teaching and free exploration. It also meant that Eustace was raised with a deep sense of curiosity and the space to discover things on his own terms. When most toddlers were kept close, carefully watched, and constantly corrected, Eustace was given a different kind of freedom. His parents trusted nature to teach him. They trusted him to listen. From his earliest years, he wandered into the woods behind the family home, finding comfort not in toys, but in leaves, stones, insects, streams, and animal tracks. He learned how to sit quietly and observe. He learned to pay attention. He learned that the natural world had patterns, rhythms, and signals, and he grew fluent in them long before he grew fluent in anything else. By the time he entered his teenage years, the woods were more familiar to him than any neighborhood street or classroom desk. He felt at home among the trees in a way he never felt within the rules of suburban life. To him, nature was honest. It did not pretend. It did not hide its truths. It did not require small talk or social masks. That difference mattered more than he realized at the time. Later, it would become the foundation of the double life he lived for decades. At the age of 17, when most young people were preparing for college or simply finishing high school, Eustace made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He packed his life into a few belongings, stepped away from his parents' home, and set up a teepee in the woods. That simple structure became his only shelter. He chose it over a bed, a house, electricity, and every comfort people considered normal. This was not a weekend escape or an experiment. It was a conscious choice to live full-time in the wild. He cooked over open fires, slept on the ground, made his clothes, and lived by daylight and weather. This was not the romantic wilderness image people see on screen. It required daily discipline, constant awareness, and a willingness to meet hardship without complaint. Yet he thrived. What others saw as extreme, he saw as natural. While his peers dealt with exams and teenage drama, he was learning to track animals, make tools, and understand the land with the intimacy of someone who saw it not as scenery but as a living teacher. His teenage years were shaped by what many would call impossible adventures. These were not small hikes or brief outings. They were journeys that demanded endurance, patience, and courage. He canoed more than 1,000 miles along the Mississippi River, experiencing the waterway not as a tourist but as a traveler moving with the power of the current. He crossed the entire Appalachian Trail, one of the most demanding routes in the United States, walking through mountains, valleys, storms, and silence. He rode horses across long distances, traveled through Alaska's rough landscape, explored Guatemala, and walked through remote forests that tested every skill he had built since childhood. During some of these travels, he lived with indigenous communities, learning from people who held knowledge passed down over generations. He watched how they blended survival with tradition, how they understood the land not as something to conquer, but as something to respect. These experiences shaped him more deeply than anything in school ever could. They gave him a sense of identity that was rooted not in modern society, but in ancient practices. They also gave him a rare ability to move between traditional living and the modern world with equal confidence. Yet, surprisingly for someone so deeply tied to the wild, Eustace did not reject education. Instead, he approached it differently. He enrolled at Appalachian State University, not to escape the wilderness, but to expand his understanding of humanity and culture. There, he earned a degree in anthropology and English, graduating magna cum laude. His academic success was not a contradiction. It was another side of his identity. It proved that he could master both scholarly knowledge and practical wilderness skill. It showed that he could excel in a classroom even while choosing to live in a tipi rather than a dormitory room. This dual existence became the first sign of the double life he would eventually become known for. On one hand, he was the wild man of the mountains, living in handmade structures, wearing natural fabrics, and relying on the land. On the other hand, he was a disciplined student with sharp insight into culture, language, and human society. He could speak the language of academia and the language of the forest, switching between them as easily as others switch between outfits. But how did Eustace build his fame despite the public criticism? How Eustace Conway became a living legend. When Eustace Conway stepped onto the land that would one day become Turtle Island Preserve, he was not thinking about fame, crowds, or cameras. He was thinking about life, a real, raw life shaped by earth, sweat, and survival. The year was 1987, and he had just purchased a vast stretch of land in the Blue Ridge Mountains near Boone, North Carolina. It was roughly 1,000 acres of thick woods, rolling hills, flowing streams, and ancient silence. Most people would have seen it as rugged and overwhelming, but Eustace saw a home, a classroom, and a future. This land became the heart of his legend, the place where he slowly built the public image that would fascinate millions. But the myth did not appear overnight. It grew one day at a time, shaped by early mornings, long nights, and a lifestyle most people could barely imagine. From the moment he settled there, Eustace knew he wanted to live in a way that felt honest to him, a way that stripped life down to its bones. So he started from scratch. No machines, no shortcuts, no easy answers. He cut trees by hand, hauled logs with horses, and built his log cabin with muscles that hardened from constant work. Every board, every beam, every corner carried his effort. Inside the cabin, life was simple: a fire for warmth, tools he crafted himself, food that came from his land or his own hands. He created a small micro-hydroelectric system, harnessing the power of flowing water to generate electricity in a way that fit his principles. It was not glamorous or flawless, but it worked. A quiet reminder that nature has its own kind of energy if one is willing to learn how to use it. On the land, he raised goats and chickens, walking out each morning to care for them before the sun fully awakened the sky. He planted crops in soil he worked without heavy machinery. He hunted when he needed meat and foraged when the land offered berries, herbs, or wild greens. Fire was a part of his daily rhythm, starting it, tending it, cooking over it, depending on it. He traveled mostly by horse, letting the pace of the animal shape the pace of his life. While others rushed through highways, Eustace moved through trails. While others listened to horns and engines, he listened to hoofbeats and wind. This lifestyle was demanding, but it made him feel alive. And though he lived far from cities and crowds, his story began drawing people without him even trying. At first, visitors came quietly. Hikers passing through, neighbors curious about the man living in a cabin he built himself, or students eager to learn skills they could not find in a classroom. Eustace welcomed them. He showed them how to start a fire without matches, how to track an animal, how to build tools from wood, and how to understand the land not as a stranger but as a partner. People came expecting to learn survival tricks. They left with a changed understanding of life. Many were shocked at how difficult basic tasks became without modern machines. Others were moved by the calm, grounded way Eustace explained things. He did not preach, he demonstrated. He lived his lessons. Soon these teachings expanded into something deeper. He realized that many people had no idea where their food came from, how water arrived in their homes, or how clothes were made. They lived in a world of instant results, quick meals, fast purchases, automatic solutions. Eustace wanted to open their eyes to the chain of work behind every simple thing. He wanted them to see the hidden cost of convenience, so he began holding speaking events. He traveled far from his mountain home to talk to crowds in towns, schools, and communities. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of experience. People listened because he had lived every truth he shared. He spoke about the value of patience, the importance of knowing how things are made, and the danger of losing touch with the natural world. His confidence, sincerity, and unusual lifestyle slowly built a kind of aura around him. People were drawn to the idea of someone who had walked away from modern noise and created a life rooted in old skills. They admired his independence, his clarity, and his courage to live differently. As interest grew, writers and filmmakers became curious. One writer created a book centered on his life and philosophy, exploring how he blended rugged living with a sharp mind and strong ideas. Filmmakers captured scenes of his daily routine, chopping wood, tending animals, teaching young people how to carve tools, and riding horses across his vast land. Later, a reality television show began featuring him, showing audiences a side of life they had never experienced. Millions of people watched him drag logs, rebuild fences, barter services with neighbors, and face storms, injuries, or unexpected setbacks. The screen turned him into something larger than life, a symbol of strength, determination, and natural wisdom. With every new documentary, every magazine story, every appearance on television, his public image grew. Yet, the interesting thing is that he did not change his lifestyle to fit the cameras. Instead, the cameras were drawn to his lifestyle because it was so different from anything else in the modern world. His authenticity became his magnet. People loved the idea of him, a man who could build his own home, feed himself from the land, and survive without relying on the endless comforts of modern society. To them, he represented a kind of freedom most people wanted but felt too afraid to chase. He had escaped the fast lanes, the deadlines, the bills, the noise, and the stress. He stood as proof that life could be lived another way, a way that felt cleaner, older, and more meaningful. This is how the myth formed, not because he crafted it, but because people needed it. They needed someone who carried the spirit of rugged individualism when the world felt too rushed and artificial. They needed someone who could remind them that humans once lived with their hands, not their screens. They needed someone who showed that nature could still be home. Eustace Conway became that figure. He became the man people pointed to when they dreamed of adventure. He became the voice that encouraged people to question their dependence on easy solutions. He became the image of moral purity rooted in the land, a man who worked hard, lived simply, and stood apart from most modern habits. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.